Welcome to Immune Recovery. I'm Dr. Christine Bowen,
And I'm Em Bowen.
and we are so excited to have you here with us today because we have one of our favorite people joining us, Dr. Iris Crawford, who is one of the best women's hormone health experts in the world, is joining us today, and she is going to drop some truth bombs on us about women's hormone balance, and is going to help us to understand more about what we might be missing. So I'd love to welcome you today, Dr. Iris Crawford. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you. So my first question that I would love to start out with is, Dr. Crawford, how did you find yourself becoming a women's hormone health specialist after all of the years? Like, how is this your passion? How did you arrive here?
That's a great question. So, when I graduated from naturopathic medical school, I was burned out, exhausted. I had anxiety, even to the point where I was having panic attacks. And I had a bunch of extra weight that I had put on in medical school. And I was doing everything in my power and in my knowledge to help with all of those things. And nothing was working. So that's how I kind of ended up digging a little deeper and kind of moving forward. And I made some discoveries just kind of working on things myself, my own health, and then also with patients as I started my practice. So I started just getting really passionate about these things because there were a lot of women out there dealing with these same issues. And no matter what they ate, no matter how much they exercised, they were trying all these different things and nothing was working. And so I started just looking into that, and over the years just became more and more curious. And I'm very passionate about women's health in particular because I feel like, women aren't getting the health care that they deserve when they go to try to get help. And so they end up just trying to be their own doctor or get turned away, right, and get discouraged. And I think that the world would be a compassionate, peaceful, sustainable place if we had more women leaders. But right now that can't happen because we're being held back with these daily kind of health struggles.
That is so insightful. And then for us, of course, we're like resonating because both of us have had our own health journeys trying to figure out what was going on with our own health and feeling like repeatedly we were not getting the help that we needed, not being listened to, despite the fact that we know our bodies and we knew that something was not right, and continued to show up saying like, somebody help me. Like, how would people begin to suspect that they might have hormone imbalances to even like start the journey into trying to rebalance hormones?
It's a great question too, because a lot of women think that it's, problems with their periods or, cramps or, PMS. Those things are the hormone issues, right? But actually, your hormones are connected to neurotransmitters, and we have receptors all over our body from our hormones. So there might be all kinds of things like low energy, sleep problems, anxiety, depression, foggy brain, weight gain,
Digestive
low,
symptoms, even
digest, yep,
autoimmune or inflammatory
totally.
symptoms, right?
Yes. Yes, these hormones are steroids, right? They're anti-inflammatory. So if there's something going on with your hormones, it's going to be all over the body. You're going to have maybe even chronic pain. You're going to have headaches. There's just all these different things that can actually be related back to hormone health. But I would say the top things would be mood and sleep problems. Um, Low libido is a huge one. Hair loss, foggy brain is huge, and exhaustion and fatigue. Those types of things. These that I don't know any woman who doesn't have at least one of those things, at least
Yeah, it's like you
sometime.
just listed our health history, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, there have been times in your life where you have felt some things that might be related to hormones, weren't quite sure. Like, did you want to share a little bit about what at least gave you some clues that hormones might not be balanced?
Um, I don't know exactly what you're going for
Oh,
there.
I
I mean,
was just
I
thinking,
know
like,
that,
yeah,
but
answer in whatever way you'd like.
I definitely think that like for me, energy levels have been huge. just grew up with and experienced a lot of high stress. So there was an assumption that, not having much energy or not sleeping well were kind of chalked up to a laziness or some sort of like character flaw rather than something going on with hormones. And then throughout my life where I was having menstruation, I would be off and on birth control, and that seemed to create some interesting fluctuations, as well as now being menopausal and experiencing hot flashes and that disrupting sleep, as well as a tough time remembering things. I definitely used to have kind of more of a steel trap brain, and now it's like if it doesn't get written down, maybe in two or three places, it stops existing. So I know that hormones are the often get in the way of my success, my career goals, and the kind of energy I wanna have.
That's so true. And what I was kind of hinting at too was things like even looking back historically and looking at things like insomnia or like a period of time when you had very high stress and then suddenly you had some abnormal hair growth or some changes in like acne. And those were not things like you've been known for your alabaster flesh for this all of our lives. It's like, whoa, look at that skin. And then it was just like, whose skin is this, during that time. And that was a huge high stress time for you when it seemed like your hormones kind of took a left turn when those stressors were happening. So when we look at somebody who's in our position, like raise your hand if you're postmenopausal or perimenopausal, like anyone, hello. So when we look at people who suspect that they might have a hormone imbalance or having some of these symptoms that either Emma's experienced or some of the things that Dr. Crawford has mentioned, how would somebody go about actually finding somebody who can give them the care that they need and want? And is that something that you can find with like a gynecologist or a primary care provider in our current healthcare system?
Yeah, that's a big one because I've been doing this for a long time as a women's hormone expert, probably about 17 years now. And almost everyone I talk to says that they went to their doctor and asked for help, with something like, I'm just not feeling 100%. Could it be my hormones? And they're not really, it doesn't go anywhere. Like they're just telling them everything's normal. And so it is hard to find the right help. One of the biggest things that I try to steer people to is finding a naturopathic physician or, a functional medicine doctor who's specializing in women's health too, because they have to know how to do the right type of testing that really will identify what's actually going on. Because right now in the conventional model, it's really, you're just doing blood tests and they're testing, one or two things like estrogen as if that's the only hormone that matters. And so, and it's just not enough. And so you're not really going to get anywhere. So I do think having a more whole person approach with it is going to be the best place to start. And I did write a book too, so that this information is out there and it helps you find help. But yeah, so so those are a couple places that you could just start, educate yourself about that there's more out there. And if your doctor said, no, everything's normal, you're just getting older, buck up, that type of a thing, then that's just not an acceptable answer. There's actually other help that you can get. So I would start there.
So starting with a naturopathic doctor or functional medicine doctor, checking out Dr. Crawford's book. Remind us the name of your book, Dr. Crawford, and we'll make sure that we put the information in the link as well.
Yeah, it's called Everything's Not Normal, The Empowered Woman's Guide to Getting the Health Care You Deserve.
It's so needed. It's so needed because there have been times that I've gone, we all know our bodies, right? And this is something that we don't get enough credit for, is that we know our bodies and we know when something's not right. We know when something's not normal. Yeah. And so then we go in and we ask for help and we're not validated and saying like, oh yeah, it does sound like something is not right, and you know your body and you're an expert in your body, so you know when something's not right, and instead it's just a pat on the head. Maybe you'll get a prescription if you're lucky. Maybe that prescription is just a Band-Aid. So that really brings us to, even if somebody does, go to a provider that does end up giving them some hormone treatments or something like that, is that addressing the root cause of what's creating the hormone imbalance? Is that going to be a good long-term sustainable solution?
Well, if you've found a good doctor who uses, bioidentical hormones to help with hormone balancing and hormone deficiencies rather than, synthetic, that's a great step in the right direction. However, when I was a kid, I always asked, but why? Why is the sky blue? But why? And so, one of the things early on in my career is, okay, here's someone in front of me who has a hormone deficiency or an imbalance. Why? So if I just identify that imbalance or the deficiency, and then I give a hormone to replace something, then what? What's the plan with that?
What's the end strategy, right?
Yeah. It might help them feel better short term. But what if you could figure out what the underlying cause of the hormonal deficiency or imbalance was, fix that, and then they don't need hormones for the rest of their lives. And so, or for 10 years and then stop and then have to go through menopause.
What is the biggest root cause of hormonal imbalance in your experience?
It is stress. So the adrenal stress response system, known as the HPA axis, it's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this is kind of something that is becoming more known, online and things like that. But this is the adrenal stress response system. It's our lizard brain. And there's a biology that the female hormone system has that is at a disadvantage, honestly, when it comes to stress. And so what happens is we experience stress, which I don't know anyone who doesn't have any stress, especially.
We spend a lot of time talking about stress management. Yes.
Yes, which I'd love to talk more about too. But when we have stress, our adrenal glands pump out a bunch of cortisol. And when that happens, cortisol and progesterone are on the same production pathway. So if you're making a bunch of cortisol, you can't make progesterone. It's one or the other, because it's survive rather than procreate. And so you become progesterone deficient when you have stress. And this is an epidemic amongst women where we're progesterone deficient, which makes us estrogen dominant. Even if you have low estrogen, you can still be estrogen dominant. And so that's a really big hormonal imbalance problem that causes anxiety, sleep problems, all of these things. And the only solution they're really offered in the conventional system right now is antidepressants or birth control pills. And so
it's just not enough.
The elephant in the room is like, we have a biological stress response that robs us of our progesterone, and it creates a hormonal imbalance. It causes what I call the triple threat to weight gain, which is why so many women struggle with weight. It's just wrapped up in a lot of things that if we just looked at that, that I think it would be so much better.
I definitely think of progesterone as being something that is so important in the function of things like the thyroid. And definitely see, when I started going through menopause, I stopped sleeping. And so I was and we watched that with our mother too, where it was suddenly mom went from, fine to anxiety and not sleeping overnight. And it wasn't oh, all these hot flashes and things that we talk about. It was what did somebody do with our mom, and why does she feel so bad all the time? So now you're answering the question. It's chronic stress response that's stealing progesterone.
Right. And I want to clarify, it's not a lack of stress management. Because that puts the onus on us as far as we have to do more, or we have to quit our job, or, something. Well, we can only meditate a certain, so many hours a day, right? So there is really, there's a way to help support that adrenal stress response system that isn't more work and more things that we have to do.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, or is that getting into like more individualized treatment for people?
Oh no, I'm happy to share. I mean, I want women everywhere to know about these things, right? And I also talk a lot about it in my book too. So there's really the biggest piece is, so what I work with my private clients, I help them. I replenish any deficiencies, balance anything that's out of balance. But then the final piece to maintain that, the work that we did together to maintain that, is really it's about supporting that adrenal stress response system, and it's mostly done. The biggest guns I think with that is a category of herbs called adrenal adaptogenic herbs. So some of these, they're all the rage right now, you know, like ashwagandha and all these things. But there's a whole category of adrenal adaptogenic herbs. Now, not all of them are appropriate for everyone, so you do need to be working with someone to get the right one for you. But that's a huge piece that you need to be able to make sure that your stress response system isn't over responding or under responding to stress, and so that you can actually handle that stress and not become hormonal deficient or imbalanced.
So it's not that you just need more time meditating or you need to quit your job, like you said, but instead like adaptogens. So sometimes people don't tolerate something like ashwagandha, as you mentioned, because it's a nightshade. And so sometimes it's not appropriate for somebody with autoimmune disease versus herbs like rhodiola or like Siberian ginseng. Are you thinking along those lines?
Reishi, cordyceps. I love the medicinal mushrooms that have the adaptogenic benefits, because they also help with immune function too. And they're typically modulating. Not everyone can take them, but they're modulating for the immune system. So if you have an autoimmune disease, it's not necessarily just going to indiscriminately shoot your immune function up, which is not a good thing for autoimmune, right? But so there's nuances and there's an art to finding the right thing for you. But something like that should be in your foundation, just like vitamin D, you know,
your multivitamin or whatever, yeah.
That you're kind of taking as your daily regimen.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you do have at least some experience with what it is that we do over at Immune Recovery. Did you want to speak to anything about your personal experience, kind of, navigating symptoms of inflammation and autoimmune? I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I was just wondering if you would like to share.
I'm an open book.
Yeah, I love that.
Because y'all have helped me so much. So I have an autoimmune disease that, thanks to Dr. Bowen, you helped diagnose that. So I have mixed connective tissue disease, and that is something along with all autoimmune disease, they can have flare-ups and things like that. So sometimes we can kind of limp along with this autoimmune disease and not really have to do too much. And we can ignore it for a little while. But if you are experiencing, chronic pain and things like that, that's, it really wears you down. So
like talking about stress response, right? Talk about stress response. How about living in chronic pain? Em, do you know anything about living in chronic discomfort or anything like that? That's like...
Since the stress causes hormonal deficiencies and those hormones are anti-inflammatory, it's the direct link, right? And so I was able to actually join your program and got incredible help, inspiration.
You are quite a chef too, which is amazing.
Coaching for what to eat and recipes, and it was exciting to be part of that community.
We were so happy to have you as part of the community as well, and I'm really hoping that the tools that you got doing the Immune Recovery Program still are helping you to this day. And then for a lot of our people, it's like they might make it through the Immune Recovery Program and be like, great, I'm at like 80% improved symptoms. What's next? And I would say probably something like digging deeper into hormone balance would be what's next.
Yes. And so my philosophy is that there's two main root causes to almost all disease. One is the adrenal stress response system. The other is gut health. And that's why food as your medicine is number one. There is no better medicine than therapeutic diets or, healthy. I mean,
nutrition.
Obviously, but everyone thinks they eat healthy. But what they don't know is how to eat healthy for them and their specific situation, their symptoms and all that. And so the fact that you guys help with that is amazing.
The practical steps for what to do, because that is the answer that most of my patients will give me. I have a healthy diet. And I'm like, well, that's great. What is it though? Because it may not be right for you. And then we like to talk a lot more about nutrition instead of diet, because we know that harm has been done in the name of diet. And so nutrition, it's about having very nutrient dense foods. But Dr. Crawford's food is like absolutely proof that you can eat a very anti-inflammatory diet and that it can be freaking gourmet. Like, Dr. Crawford, thank you for posting your recipes and pictures on our social media, because it's like awe-inspiring. I'm like, oh no, sometimes my food does not look pretty. It may taste amazing. It does not look pretty at all, but it seems like you really take that to the next level. Is that part of how you stick with healthful eating, is making it beautiful and appealing and all of that?
Oh yes, I find eating to be an experience. It's not just about fuel for me, and I love the art of food. And so I like cooking. I like experimenting a lot. So if you are the type of person that likes to cook and likes to experiment, then yeah, it's just a fun adventure.
That's so awesome. Em, do you have any questions for Dr. Crawford or anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation?
I'm just feeling really grateful for your time. And I think that you've given people information that'll help them get started in kind of identifying those symptoms that they've had that have been a little amorphous, a little hard to pin down, and easy to write off for the average general practitioner, general doc, so that they can start looking at, like, I think all three of us really just want people to experience vibrant health and feeling as well as we can. You know, not to be ableist, because some people will be chronically ill. I don't want to like not include those folks. And at the same time, can we increase somebody's quality of life? Can we increase the kind of energy that you can put towards the things you're passionate about, or the relationships you want to be in? And so I think that hormone health is such a big part of that, and it's definitely clearly part of autoimmunity. And I love that you've been able to use our program and try some of those recipes and tips while you are informed by how hormones might be also playing a part in that. So just want to express gratitude. Thank you so much.
Echo that gratitude. Thank you.
Well, and I love your point too about the fact that we're all on a journey, even each of us right here and everyone watching, we're all on a journey towards improving our health, but we'll never attain perfect health. It's impossible to attain. We live in an imperfect world. We can't be perfect ourselves. So yeah, we're just all like helping people from our place of imperfection and helping people just move forward. So yeah.
It's a journey. Rinse and repeat, reapply, self-care every single day. And
Yes.
that's what we can do, is continue to show up for ourselves. And then in community, we feel like we can help more people. So thank you again so much. How can people connect with you, Dr. Crawford?
They can find me at the Hormone Boss website. So it's hormone-boss.com. And there's information there that they could even sign up for a free consult if they felt that they wanted to meet me and get an idea of what it'd be like to work with me. I do offer that. And then just lots of information there. And also my book. So that's on Amazon, and they'll be able to get that. And that is very educational too.
Awesome. And we'll have more information about how to connect with Dr. Crawford in the show notes as well. Thank you both so much for this very engaging conversation, and we do hope that it helps people to think a little bit differently about some of those symptoms, and then be able to see, like, oh, is this the missing puzzle piece in what it will take to get my health improved by the next step, right? Thanks you. Oh, yeah, take care. Thanks for coming today. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when we post new content.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook and other social media.